Good morning and welcome to this morning's talk. It's a fairly impromptu talk. I probably decided about an hour and a half ago that I'd like to put something together around fear. So I've called today's talk Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I'm just putting it out there that every time I do a talk, my fear or my anxiety goes through the roof, probably up to about 8 or 9 out of 10. I start running around, scattering around, wondering what I'm going to say. Is everything going to be okay? Is everything sorted out? So the talk Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway is sort of, I'm living an example of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And especially today's session, because what I've decided to do today, other than it being an impromptu talk and I'm kind of winging it, is I'm not going to be using PowerPoint or any slides behind sort of to lead me. So I've made a couple of notes and I'm going to try and flow through it and sort of unpack fear and anxiety as we go through today's talk. And a big part of why today's talk is pertinent or relevant is sort of on my exercise rounds. A lot of guys are now, we're allowed to exercise in South Africa, so certainly between 6 and 9 we're allowed to go out, so everyone goes out between 6 and 9, and there's been a lot of chatter, nervousness around fear, around lockdown, relaxing, and I think this is happening globally. As we're coming out of lockdown, so is our anxiety increasing. Our children are supposed to go back to school, we've got to go back to work. If you have domestics, the helpers, they need to come back to our houses, and anxiety seems to be going through the roof. So today's talk is on fear in general, not about panic attacks or anxiety attacks. I think we can do another session on that another day. I just want to talk around fear in general and what is fear. So right, let me flow into it. I keep thinking I've got to go to a PowerPoint slide, but so I want to chat about fear and what is fear. So fear is different to anxiety. When we have fear, fear has a subject. I'm scared of a snake. I'm scared of a spider. I'm scared of dogs. Anxiety is more free-floating anxiety when I don't really know what I'm actually scared of. And this we call anxiety. So you can't actually say it's one thing when it's anxiety. But what I've come to understand is, or what I've come to fear, in inverted commas, is that people are starting to fear fear itself. Or we're starting to become anxious about anxiety. Hi, Barbs. Thanks for joining my impromptu talk this morning. So people are actually starting to become scared of fear. And there is actually a word for the fear of fear, and that word is phobophobia. It's the same with exam anxiety. People aren't actually scared of exams, they're actually scared of anxiety, the feeling that goes with it, and we're going to get around to that now. Hi LCB, thanks for joining in. So today's talk is about fear, and like I've said, fear has a subject, and I'm talking to the fact that we have started to fear fear itself. Okay, I want to talk that certainly regarding COVID and lockdown, etc. Our fear is around death and being trapped by this illness and then dying. But today's talk is not about death. It's not about dying. I think that's also a whole other session. We could put a series together on death and dying. And certainly I think that is extremely important to do because we do have a huge fear of death. But today's talk is about fear and the fear of fear. So, fear is extremely important. Why do we need fear? We need fear to survive. We must have fear. And when we have fear in our lives, one can imagine if we were living in a cave and a saber-toothed tiger came around the corner, we would have to be scared of the saber-toothed tiger. It's going to kill us. Our heart needs to start racing. We're going to start breathing frantically, hyperventilating. This is so the heart needs to start beating to get blood to the muscles. We need to start hyperventilating to get oxygen into our body so that we can start running. And then we're either going to fight the saber-toothed tiger or we're going to head for the hills and run for our lives. So fear is about survival, which is great. So it is a survival mechanism. Fight or flight, we all know about it. We're either going to fight or run away. The problem for us, which is what my talk today is around, when we are not confronted by a saber-toothed tiger, when our fear actually becomes fear itself and we start creating monsters in our heads. And if you've been to any of my other talks or sat through any of my other talks, we often spoke about when we were kids, we all had monsters under the bed. And when we looked there were no monsters there. So these monsters as adults now reside in our heads. So when fear becomes false and when our minds are creating a monster for us, there's a nice acronym for fear, and it's false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. It's kind of like fake news, I suppose. But false evidence appearing real. This creates huge problems for us because it affects our lives and it becomes a very limiting belief. So I want to then also talk, so to move off that, so we've got this, the real reason for fear when it's good, and then the other reason for fear when it's not good. For example, me presenting in front of a crowd here now, or you standing doing public speaking. It's one of the reasons why public speaking is arguably, I think, first or second on the things we most fear. And it's because we might be judged. Then it's not important. The audience is not a pack of saber-toothed tigers. They're just people sitting there like you and me. So fear, as well as being a noun, is also a feeling. Okay? So as a feeling, the challenge would be, do we like to feel fear or don't we? And I would hypothesize and certainly say arguably we don't like to feel fear. Why? Because it makes our heart race. We sweat, we get nervous, we start getting shaky. So we don't like to feel fear. And again, fear is a natural reaction to something we perceive as going to create problems for our survival. Okay? Real or unreal. And we've touched on this thing that our bodies don't understand, can't make the difference or can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. So there's always cause and effect. And I've used the snake analogy before. If a snake comes into the room, what do? We run away or we kill the snake. So there's always cause and effect. The problem is that in between this cause and effect, so the snake coming into the room and there's an effect which is fear, okay, and then we end up running away. What we fail to understand is that between cause and effect is a belief system, a thought, a perception. So even if you put COVID there, COVID being the cause, and or lockdown, or coming out of lockdown, the effect of coming out of lockdown or going into lockdown was fear. The effect of coming out of lockdown is fear as well, and anxiety, and we don't want to feel that. So we start trying to control it in whatever ways. We put our masks on, which we should do, or we stay in our houses. So it's also creating a lot of agoraphobia. I'm noticing some posts on Facebook, people are saying, when can we come out? When will it be safe again? And it's never going to be safe again, you know, because COVID is going to be around. So this is where this whole talk is leading to. We're going to have to learn to do things with fear. But I'm going to get to that just now. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So COVID creates an effect. Firstly, fear. Okay, and then we don't want to fear. We don't want to feel fear, so we stay in our houses and do whatever. Wash our hands, make sure we stay clean, sanitize the areas, which we must do. But now we are being told to go out again. Okay, and this is what's creating huge amounts of anxiety for people. They've told us to be scared of this thing called COVID. Now they're saying we must go out. How do I start mixing with society? How do I do my job without being scared? Okay. Now, there's only one way to do that. Look at your belief system around this idea. Okay. So we've got cause and effect, and in between that is your belief system. What are my thoughts around this? How do I process this information? So either I can change my thinking, or I can learn just to live with my thinking. So I can change my relationship to it. I could become friends with my thoughts, or friends with this emotion called fear, okay, in order to live with it. I had a discussion with someone last night. We were on Zoom, having a bra Zoom party, and we were talking about fear, you know, and I said, you know, we live in South Africa. It's a dangerous country, a beautiful country, but it's also a dangerous country. We can be murdered, you could be raped, you could be attacked in your home. There's a lot of things, but yet we all carry on about our lives, and we don't stop living because this could happen to us. It's the same with COVID. We cannot stop living because there's COVID in the world suddenly that we've now discovered. That arguably has been around for a while, but now it is now headline news. So we need to be able to go about our daily business, taking the necessary precautions, washing our hands, sanitizing, wearing masks, etc., until such time as it's okay not to do that. But many of us are too scared to do this. We want certainty that there is no COVID out there. That's another talk as well around intolerance of uncertainty, but we'll get to that. So we've already touched on this thing of fear, which is phobophobia. So we've definitely started becoming scared of being scared. And I've got a wonderful anecdote around this. I worked with a young lady who wanted to do Ironman, and well, she was training hard for Ironman, but every time the day came up for her to swim in the sea, she was petrified of the sea. Even though she could swim, she could do the 3.8 Ks. And probably in about session 3 or 4 with her around trying to work out her fear of the sea, etc., I said to her, how much anxiety do you want when you're on the beach before you get into the water? She says, I want 0 out of 10. Okay? And that was her problem, and many people's problems. They're scared to go out because they want to feel 0% anxiety, which is impossible. It is not going to happen. I mentioned to this young lady that I've surfed my whole life. or most of my life, and I am still thinking of sharks when I'm in the water. I still think a jellyfish might sting me. A killer whale can come up underneath my board, all right? Or a great white shark is probably the biggest thing that one thinks about. Which means I get into the water probably at an anxiety level of 5 out of 10. Okay? It doesn't stop me surfing. I don't think of sharks the whole time in the water, but my anxiety is probably between 3 and 5. I've got to be looking out in case there's a fin that pops up or something, but I'm not sitting nervous, and I certainly don't surf because I'm scared of sharks. We still surf with that fear. So it is extremely important to understand this concept and understand that living with fear or living with whatever other emotion we've got to live with is okay. All right? And we just need to be, same with this COVID story. We are going to go out into the world again with our fears and just take necessary precautions that we need to do. But we cannot sit in our chairs. I said to someone, if you want to protect yourself for the rest of your life, stay in your chair, wrap yourself in bubble wrap, and hope that you don't die from COVID. But I said you might then die of a heart attack or a stroke. So we need to go out with our fear. We cannot be scared and not get on with our lives. And you can replace fear with depression and sadness and whatever it is, anxiety. We need to live with these maladies, let's call it. Okay. So it's extremely important to, like I started this talk today, and what my title of this talk is, feel the fear and do it anyway. And if you can't do it, or if you can't beat fear, do it with fear. I sometimes say it's the same reason people don't even attempt a long marathon or comrades or Ironman. Is this fear, or they're scared that they're not going to finish, or they're scared that someone's going to, if they don't finish, people are going to laugh at them. So they don't even get up and try it. So what I'm saying is, if you cannot beat this idea of fear, just do it with the fear. And this is this whole talk. Feel the fear and do it anyway. I drill it into my children to be able to do this. The other day, my young boy was on a climbing wall before lockdown, and he got halfway up, and he said, I can't do it, let me down. And I said, Stu, what did I teach you about feel the fear and do it anyway? And he went, oh yes, Dad, I remember that. Because he was on a rope, he was tied in a harness, so there was no reason he couldn't fall off this wall. So he just started climbing. And by the time he got to the top, he was up and down, and then showing everyone how brave he was, because he had overcome this little miniature, what's not a miniature barrier, it's actually a major hurdle in our heads, a limiting belief. So then I want you to also then I'm just trying to think of some ideas that I've come across, and I'm also posting, you'll see today I've posted a lot of posts around fear and a lot of great memes around fear, because it's something that, as I said, it hit me like a ton of bricks that we've actually become scared of fear itself. So what is the greatest way to overcome fear is to make your vision so clear and so vivid, like your value system, that you know exactly where you're going. That of course is going to be fear in what I'm attempting to do. So say you're starting a new job, or starting a new career, or starting something new, or tackling a marathon for the first time. Make your vision so clear that you're going to do it with that fear, and your fear actually becomes irrelevant. Okay? The fear becomes a small part about your greater vision of what you're trying to achieve. And never, ever, ever be afraid to fail. We should never, ever be afraid to fail, because that fear of failure is going to stop us from even trying in the first place. And second, lastly, to remind yourself that action is the antidote to fear. If we do not take action, we are going to constantly sit back, and the more you sit back, the bigger fear grows, because we end up feeding that wolf. We end up feeding fear itself, and it becomes quite a bully in our lives. And I often say to people, fear or anxiety came into your life to help you, to assist you. But if you start allowing it to dominate, if you keep feeding this wolf, fear is going to become a bully in your life, and it's going to beat you down, and you're going to become so scared that it's going to become debilitating. And I think this is what's prompted this talk, is that I wanted to reach out to people that feel like we can develop agoraphobia, where we're too scared to go out in case we have a panic attack or an anxiety attack. And I really think we should talk about that in another session, and I'll definitely put something together around panic attacks. And then lastly, Churchill, in a wonderful quote of his, and I think I've posting it sometime today, said, fear is a reaction, but courage is a decision. Fear is a reaction to the world that's coming at us, but courage is a decision that we take. So I want you guys, there's a lovely sign above me here that says courage, subliminal advertising. So have courage to take the next step, to take action in what is about to happen. And as I said, I'm trying to use the context of COVID and lockdown and the easing of lockdown and how we're going to have to get out there. I'll never forget the first time I went out to the shops after about 5 days. I couldn't believe this little nagging voice that made me slightly scared. And you've just got to actually overcome it. All right. So I want to thank you all for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it. Hope it went well. If you liked it, please share this video because there's a lot of people that are going to need it going forward. Like my post if you can, and share it. Yeah, and join me again. I'm going to keep doing this. As I said, the 9 o'clock slot has become a bit difficult because of the exercising and walking my dogs. But thanks a stack and have a great Saturday. Take care.